Welcome to the Saint Miracle channel. Today we're diving deep into the extraordinary life of Saint Anthony of Padua. You might know him as the go-to saint for finding lost things.
Yeah, but there's so much more to his story than that.
Right. Anthony's life was filled with incredible teachings, powerful preaching.
And of course, amazing stories of miracles.
Exactly. I mean, his life is truly captivating.
What I find fascinating about St. Anthony is how his life story connects to the history and religion of his time.
It makes it even more compelling, for sure.
Definitely.
Okay, so let's go back to the beginning. Anthony was born in 1195 in Lisbon, Portugal. His given name was Fernando Martins de Bulhões,
He was actually from a wealthy family.
and he started his religious journey with the Augustinian order.
But then something happened that completely changed his path.
A pivotal moment, you could say.
Absolutely. He came face to face with the remains of Franciscan martyrs, 5 of them killed in Morocco because of their faith.
That encounter must have been incredibly powerful.
It was a turning point for him. Anthony felt this strong urge to join the Franciscans. He wanted to spread the gospel, even if it meant facing danger.
So he actually took the name Anthony and set off for Morocco himself, like following in the footsteps of those martyrs.
Trying to, yeah, but it didn't quite go to plan.
Oh, right. He got sick and had to turn back.
And then his ship was blown off course and ended up in Sicily.
Wow, talk about a detour.
From there, he eventually made his way to Tuscany, ended up at a hermitage near Forli.
So it seems like this period was a time of prayer and study for Anthony.
Yeah, a time for quiet reflection. But then things took another unexpected turn.
I bet this is where the preaching comes in, right?
You got it. At an ordination ceremony, there was a bit of a mix-up.
Oh,
The Franciscans were expecting a preacher from the Dominican order, but he wasn't able to make it.
so they were kind of stuck.
Yeah, and almost by chance, they asked Anthony to step in,
Yeah.
fill the gap.
Little did they know.
Exactly. The seemingly ordinary event, it became a defining moment.
It unleashed this gift for preaching that no one even knew he had.
It said that his sermon was so captivating, so moving, it completely took the audience by surprise.
This was the true beginning of Anthony's public ministry. And he was sent to preach in the Franciscan province of Romagna, right?
Yes. And it's important to remember the context of this time. The church was dealing with different groups, heretical movements, who had beliefs that went against church teachings.
So Anthony's preaching was particularly relevant in this environment,
Definitely. He had a way of presenting Christianity in a really positive light.
focusing on the beauty and truth of it.
Exactly, instead of just attacking those other views. And his approach resonated with people. It really drew them to his message.
So around this time, Anthony's path crossed with St. Francis of Assisi himself, right?
Yeah. It's interesting because Francis was a little hesitant about too much focus on intellectual pursuits within the order.
He was worried it might distract from the Franciscan emphasis on poverty and service.
Exactly. But Anthony had this deep knowledge, yet he was so humble and truly committed to Franciscan values.
I guess it was hard for Francis to argue with that.
Anthony proved that intellect and simple living could go hand in hand.
He challenged those preconceived notions.
Absolutely. So Francis actually entrusted Anthony with educating other friars.
He became the first Franciscan teacher.
Exactly. And his sermons, they were so insightful, they were collected later. Sunday sermons and feast day sermons, they give you a real sense of his teaching style.
I've heard he used allegory and symbolism to explain Scripture, making it come alive for listeners.
He really had a gift for that.
So Anthony's reputation as a preacher grew quickly, and soon he was traveling all over northern Italy and southern France.
Often to areas where those heretical movements were strong.
About 400 preaching journeys, they say.
Think about that, constantly on the move.
Oh.
Preaching to all sorts of people, sometimes hostile crowds. It's incredible.
Speaking of connecting with audiences, there's that story about Anthony preaching to the fish.
Oh, yeah, remember that one.
When the people in Rimini wouldn't listen to him, he went to the seashore and started preaching to the fish instead.
The story says a huge crowd of fish gathered.
Drew in the townspeople, even the heretics. Everyone was amazed.
It might be embellished a bit over time, but it really shows Anthony's charisma and his way of engaging people no matter who they were.
Even fish.
Exactly. It emphasizes his willingness to go to any lengths to share his message.
It's like saying even creation itself is receptive to the Word of God.
Right. That even the fish, in their own way, could recognize the truth in what he was saying.
Now let's talk about the part of Anthony's life that most people are drawn to, The miracles.
These stories are so vivid and so central to how people remember him.
We definitely need to take a closer look.
For sure. Okay, so one of the most famous miracles associated with Anthony, it involves a stolen book.
A stolen book?
Yeah, it was a Psalter, a book of Psalms, and it was super important to Anthony. He had all these notes and commentaries written in it.
Oh, wow. I can only imagine how devastating that would be, especially back then.
Right. Before printing presses and all.
Books were so rare.
Hand-copied
Time.
forever.
Years of work.
Exactly. So for a Franciscan friar, living a life of poverty, losing something like that, it was a huge blow.
More than just sentimental value, for sure.
Totally. It impacted his ability to study and teach.
So this Psalter was stolen.
Yeah. By a novice who was leaving the Franciscan order.
Oh, no.
Anthony was heartbroken. He prayed so hard for the book to be returned.
What happened? Did it work?
Well, something incredible happened. The novice, maybe touched by Anthony's prayers, or, maybe something else intervened. He brought the book back.
Wow, that's amazing.
And not only that, he also rejoined the order.
He must have had a change of heart.
It's a powerful story. And they say the book is still preserved to this day in a Franciscan friary in Bologna.
It makes sense why people pray to Anthony for lost things.
Yeah, but the miracles attributed to Anthony, they go way beyond finding lost stuff.
Okay, like what? Give me another one.
All right, picture this. Anthony's having dinner with a group of heretics.
Heretics, that's bold.
I know, right? So during the meal, he realizes something's off. They're trying to poison him.
Oh, wow.
He confronts them, and they actually admit to it, but they challenge him. They're like, if you really believe those biblical words, if they drink any deadly thing, it will not harm them, then eat the food.
Talk about putting your faith to the test.
Right. But Anthony doesn't hesitate. He blesses the food and eats it. Nothing. No ill effects whatsoever.
That must have been a shock to those who were trying to poison him.
Talk about a powerful testimony of faith. Okay, here's another one for you. This one takes place in Lisbon.
His birthplace.
Exactly. A young boy drowns while out on a boat. Tragic, right?
Awful.
The boy's mother is completely distraught. She prays desperately to Anthony.
Praying for a miracle.
She promises that if her son is brought back to life, she'll dedicate him to the Franciscan order.
Wow.
So they wait. And on the third day, the boy wakes up.
No way.
Just like that. As if from a deep sleep. No harm done.
What are the chances?
The mother, she keeps her promise. When the boy's older, he joins the Franciscans.
It really shows the depth of her faith.
These stories are so powerful.
They are. Okay, what about those stories of Anthony healing people? I know there are a few of those.
Oh, yeah, those are amazing. There's one about a young man who confesses to Anthony. He says he kicked his own mother in a fit of rage, causing her to fall.
That's terrible.
Anthony, maybe in the heat of the moment, he says something like, "A foot that would do such a thing deserves to be cut off."
Oh, no.
So the young man takes Anthony's words literally. He goes home and actually chops off his foot.
Oh, my goodness, what?
When Anthony hears about this, he rushes to the young man, prays over him, and get this.
He heals him.
He reattaches the severed foot.
That's incredible. I guess the moral of the story is don't take things too literally.
Maybe. It definitely shows Anthony's compassion, though, right? Even for someone who had done something so wrong.
He was willing to intercede for anyone who needed help.
Yeah. It's important to remember, though, these miracles, we have to see them through the lens of the time period.
Right. People back then had a different worldview.
For them, the supernatural was part of everyday life.
Miracles weren't just stories. They were a reality.
They believed in the power of God's intervention in a way that we might struggle to grasp today.
It's like a window into a different way of seeing the world.
Exactly. It's a way of showing gratitude. Like, thank you, Saint Anthony, for helping me out.
Yeah, so people give bread as a way of saying thanks.
Yeah, sometimes money, too. Or other donations.
And these offerings usually go to charity.
Often, yeah. Like helping the poor or supporting the education of priests.
That's a beautiful way to carry on his legacy.
It really is. Turning faith into action.
Okay, but how did this tradition even start?
There are a few different stories about its origins. One of the most well-known goes back to 1263.
Okay.
The Basilica of Saint Anthony in Padua. It was still being built at that time.
Right.
And tragically, a young child drowned nearby. His mother was heartbroken, obviously. She prayed so fervently to Anthony.
I can't even imagine.
She made a promise. If her son was brought back to life, she would donate bread to the poor, equal to the child's weight.
Wow, that's a powerful promise.
And guess what?
The boy lived.
He was miraculously revived,
Yeah.
and the grateful mother kept her word. She gave all that bread to the poor.
That's amazing.
It's believed that this act of faith and generosity sparked the tradition of St. Anthony's bread.
It's a tradition that's still going strong today, centuries later.
Absolutely. And there are other stories, too. Like, have you heard about Louise Bouffier?
I don't think so.
She was a shopkeeper in France. One day, she couldn't open her shop.
The door was stuck.
Yeah. None of the keys would work. She was about to call a locksmith, but then she stopped. And she prayed to St. Anthony.
Praying for a miracle locksmith.
Not exactly. She promised to give bread to the poor if the door would just open without any force. As soon as she finished her prayer, the door opened. Just like that.
It's incredible how these stories still have the power to inspire, even centuries later.
They remind us that faith can move mountains.
So we've explored so much about St. Anthony today.
His life was truly extraordinary.
He wasn't just about finding lost things.
Not at all. He was a gifted preacher, a dedicated teacher,
A miracle worker,
a scholar, a leader.
and above all, a man of deep faith and compassion.
What strikes me most about Anthony is how his story continues to resonate with people all over the world.
Even centuries after his death.
His life, it challenges us to go beyond the surface, to seek deeper meaning,
To live our faith with passion and purpose.
and to use our gifts to make the world a better place.
Just like he did.
Exactly.
So, to all our viewers out there,
Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our Saint Miracle channel. We'll be back soon with another deep dive into the fascinating lives of the saints.
until then, keep seeking, keep believing, and keep the miracles alive in your own life.